Hello there, everybody, and welcome back to Circling Seattle Sports on Converge Media. The summer weather is heating up. Some of our teams are as well, while others are finding, I guess, the AC and cooling off, and not in a good way. The Seahawks are a little bit quieter this week as we jump right into their news with training camp coming up starting technically on Wednesday. I'm sure we'll get more storylines there, but, we still have to wait for a DK Metcalf extension.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, the big thing is, I know you kind of
Elephant in the
shut that
room.
out of the mind for a little bit. The quarterback situation, will we get Chris Carson this year, if at all, and the rest of this, if he's going to continue to play, that new look defense, all that sort of stuff. But we don't have any of that for the current moment.
But we have division rival news.
Which, we always going to keep, what is that old saying? Is like, keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. Got to keep an eye on what's going on in the NFC West. So what's going on over there?
Arizona and Kyler Murray finally reached an agreement for a 5-year extension. So that's a $230.5 million deal that includes $160 million guaranteed. And that makes him the second highest paid quarterback in the NFL behind Aaron Rodgers. And that's the second highest for money guaranteed behind Deshaun Watson. So now we transition over into our 49ers. The 49ers have given Garoppolo permission to seek a trade after he was cleared to start practicing and are reportedly thrilled with where the QB stands in his rehab process after shoulder surgery.
I was told last week that I was too wishy-washy, and I'll say this about Garoppolo, to make a decision on it and to give you an opinion on it. At the end of the day, at the right price, it would be solid for Seattle to add Garoppolo to the quarterback room. We've talked about it before. With the right pieces around him, which Seattle has offensively, right? Offensive line, that's still to be determined. But with weapons-wise, in San Francisco, Santa Clara, Garoppolo has plenty of offensive weapons, right? And it's not like he would necessarily lose a step in terms of his weaponry here in Seattle. But again, this is at the right price because you're also, trading within the division. You don't want 49ers to get any better because of a trade like that necessarily. So at the end of the day, if it happens, it's not the end of the world. I get it. I've given Jimmy Garoppolo, his due before, but at the end of the day, why not, right? You've got a guy in Geno Smith who, has played solidly in some starting time that he's gotten. Drew Lock has kind of been deemed as an unproven guy by the Denver media, never really got a shot. And I mean, you give a guy like Drew Lock, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, continues to be with Noah Fant in the running back room, if healthy, right? Again, those are two. I say Lock and Garoppolo. You give them the right pieces to succeed, they'll be fine.
Yeah.
But again, that's my big hookup, is at the right price.
Yeah. So there was some back and forth between him and Trey Lance last year, but of course they did make it to the playoffs. So I don't think that, like you said, with the right pieces and at the right price, it might pay off.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, I know that I am a heavy proprietor of defense wins championships, right? But if your offense just sucks and they're not putting anything up, you're not going to go anywhere. But I think they went pretty decently far in the playoffs, and you don't do that without scoring some points, So at the end of the day, I would not, it wouldn't be the end of the world if Garoppolo ended up in Seattle, but that could entirely not happen because, as we've said, for months now, it just seems like Pete Carroll, John Schneider, their whole thing, they're not going to go for another quarterback. They're happy with where they are in their current quarterback room. So.
Yeah. If any news breaks, of course, in terms of quarterbacks, and we will be sure to update you guys. But all that we have to look ahead to now is, as you stated, training camp. So it starts Wednesday, and that's about it for our Seahawks. So you can go ahead and transition into our Mariners.
So, yeah, when I made my corny joke about teams cooling off, it's the Mariners. I mean, we've talked about them, their 14-game win streak. They were the talk of the town for the past few weeks, and even the talk of some national media. They were our stars of the week the last 2 weeks unanimously, right? And things were looking good. And I was kind of worried. I'm like, hey, All-Star break's great. It's great to see Julio recognized. Great for him to participate in the home run derby that we'll talk about here in a second. Ty France to finally get that honor. Great for those guys to have that, right? And they get a little bit of a break having, played as many games as they had. But I'm worried that, you've got all this momentum. You just want to keep going, right?
Yeah.
And so anyway, we'll start with the home run derby as that took place on Monday after we finish up the show here. So Julio Rodriguez participated on that in July 18th. Julio finished second in the entire Derby, falling to champion Juan Soto. He defeated Pete Alonso along the way. He had 2 home run rounds, 81 homers total to Juan Soto's, I believe, 52. So you can see the big disparity there. At the end of the day, we'll get to it in relation to Julio's injury that I'm sure if you follow the team, follow us on social media, you'll know that took place. I you're young and you've got that power, and he wanted to put that show on. I mean, what's his whole nickname, right? I know that on the
J-Rod.
broadcast they kept saying J-Rod J Show, and that was just, I'm like, hey man,
it drove
I get
me
it.
crazy.
He's a Seattle guy, but you can give him his due respect, and by just knowing his nickname. I mean, it's his Instagram handle, for God's sake.
Right.
But I think at the end of the day, maybe I'm being corny, maybe I'm setting up the story here, but the All-Star game is in Seattle next year, and he can win it in front of the Seattle fan.
No, I mean, that was the silver lining in watching his performance and him not winning it all is it is in Seattle next year. So a lot of people look at it that way.
So, I get that a lot of guys, you look at some of the best home run hitters this year, like Aaron Judge, guys like him aren't necessarily in the Derby. And I mean, that's my thing. Julio's young. He wants to do it, get it out of the way, win it next year. And then sure, maybe he's done. I mean, if he wants to continue to pursue that title and he's able to manage that on top of the regular season workload, that's his choice, though.
Yeah.
It's, you get all these people on Twitter, and we'll get to it again with the injury, but it's like, oh, he shouldn't have done that. Are you the one in the All-Star game? Are you the one who has that opportunity? No. So you don't get to make that decision. I'm not making decisions for other people. So yes, that took place. The All-Star game itself, the American League won their 9th straight game, winning 3-2. Julio goes over 2 in that game, gets a couple catches in center field. Ty France goes over 1 in his lone plate appearance. And then, so we get to this Astros series, and we talked about the All-Star game right there. Obviously, Seattle hosts next year's Midsummer Classic. And the logo, I mean, you can kind of already see it. I've already got my sticker on here.
No way. I didn't even see that.
I've got the sticker on. So you've kind of seen it. And I'm sure, again, if you follow us on social media, if you've followed the Mariners at all, you know that the logo dropped. If you have not seen it, here is next year's All-Star Game logo. You can see, obviously, that Mount Rainier is prominent there. They've got some nice trees. I'm assuming they're evergreen trees.
Yeah.
Right. The Space Needle, Space Noodle. There's the sun peeking out. I know that there's some controversy. My buddy Paul doesn't like the All-Star, the little shine right there in between All-Star, because it's very similar to the Tampa Bay Rays logo. They have the same little twinkle. So I get that, but I like the colors. I like having Mount Rainier in there. I'm okay with it. I think it's solid, and I'm looking forward to the festivities next year. That'll be a lot of fun. It'll bring great revenue to the city. It should help improve I'm sure they'll add more improvements to the ballpark like they always do, which they took away our press box. They moved us upstairs. But, it'll be a lot of fun. It'll be exciting. That was part of the pregame festivities. So for this Astros series. So let's look at that Astros series starting on July 22nd, Friday, with a sold-out house of 45,000 plus. The Mariners would lose that first game, losing their win streak in a 5-2 loss earlier in the game. Third baseman Eugenio Suarez going 1 hit, 1 RBI, and 1 walk. So tough one there. You lose the win streak, not able to tie or go past the 2001 team's 15-game win streak. But at the end of the day, it's a win streak. It's baseball. It's 162 games. You're going to lose eventually, right? Not the end of the world necessarily, you think. Right. July 23rd, looking to bounce back from that loss in game 2, unfortunately could not in a 3-1 loss. Play of the game. Designated hitter of that game, Carlos Santana, hitting 1 hit, 1 run, 1 RBI, a solo shot to put the Mariners on the board. Unfortunately, Seattle can't do anything after that. And then, so you lost the series already. You look to salvage at least one game against Houston, unable to do so in the July 24th loss, an 8-5 loss. So in that game, you see 5 runs. The first 2 games, 2 and 1 run, you think, the offense just is sputtering. They score 5 runs. They were all from the 7th inning up, though. Yeah. And my main issue with that game is Robbie Ray had been great for like a month's time. And it's actually kind of ironic because the June 6th game in Houston against the Astros, he had a bad outing, but there was a mound meeting he had, and then things just sort of clicked for him.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny that his two that stretch is bookended by the Astros, because this one he got thumped. He gave up his most runs since the game in Chicago against the White Sox when there was rain there was a ton of rain. It was his shortest outing since 2019, where it only went one inning, I believe. So it was a tough one, and the Astros kind of have Robbie Ray's number. I mean, they hit 300 plus against him. They have great numbers against Robbie Ray, so it's kind of a bugaboo. But another negative thing, we're looking at negative things here. Another thing with Ray and the Astros is over his next 4 outings, Ray plays at Houston versus the Yankees. I think versus the Astros, and then at the Yankees.
Oh, goodness.
So 2 against the Yankees, 2 against the Astros.
That's rough.
It's rough. But, at the end of the day, this is a guy that won the Cy Young last year, and you paid, what, $150 million or so to?
Mm-hmm.
You have to get what you paid for. This is, again, the second half has just, quite literally just started, and you're going to play a lot of teams that aren't in playoff spots and won't be in playoff spots, from now until October. But these games could matter because, the Yankees are going to be in their top of the division. The Astros, got some comment last week about being wishy-washy with potential of taking the division. It's not completely out of the picture if this team is able to win these games against Houston. So I know who you are. It's not out of the picture. I get looking at one game at a time, but you can also be greedy at times. These next 4 games for Ray are going to be huge. Because you've these few weeks right after the All-Star break are difficult because you played Houston, played Texas, obviously take care of business. You go on the road to play Houston. You've got the Yankees coming to town the beginning of August. You go to New York to play the Yankees. It's tough. These are some really good baseball teams, some of the best teams in baseball, so you're going to need them. You're going to need your starting rotation that has carried you, right, for most of the season.
Yeah.
So you're going to need them. Player of the game for the 21st, second baseman Abraham Toro, 1 hit, 2 runs, 2 RBIs, and a walk. We get to player of the week here. Not our usual suspects necessarily, for me at least, not our usual suspects, but it's not like necessarily anybody had that spectacular of a week numbers-wise. I went with Dylan Moore this week. Moore kind of playing a utility role, played some outfield, played some infield, had to play center field for Julio Rodriguez, and we'll get to that injury news, which is next. 9 plate appearances. Moore had 4 hits, 1 run, a double, 5 total bases, a 4.44 average, a 500 even on base percentage, a 5.56 slugging. Both of those combined to make a 1.056 OPS. So Moore, has been he's kind of, him and Sam Haggerty are kind of like super utility guys because you can play him in the outfield, you can play him in the infield anywhere, which is good. It's good. Any successful ball club is going to have those guys. You just don't want to have them have to play as much as these guys are playing. You want to be able to put Mitch Haniker in right field and not Sam Haggerty. You want Kyle Lewis to be in a DH spot instead of some of these guys, right? That hasn't been the case due to injury. Kyle Lewis is back, thankfully. Mitch Haniger just completed a 3-game stretch for a rehab assignment, but there's also no timetable for him. And then also we could be looking at trades because the deadline is coming up. There's a lot going on in Mariners land. What made you go with Ty France? Was it numbers based?
It was completely numbers based this week. Like you said, no one had a spectacular performance. So Ty France had 12 plate appearances, 3 hits, 1 run, 1 home run, 1 RBI, 6 total bases, a 250 average, 357 on base percentage, 500 slugging, and 857 on base plus slugging. So yeah, just went to the numbers for this week.
Can't blame you on that one. Because again, looking at it, not like anybody blew it away. It was a tough offensive series against Houston. You played against, Framber Valdez on Sunday was an all-star this year. Justin Verlander's a surefire Hall of Famer. Jose Urquidy, the Mariners have beat him up this year, and they didn't do it. He was able to get the better of them this time around. There was one instance where the bases were loaded, I believe, and they didn't capitalize, and it was Sam Haggerty striking out. And it's like, if you put Mitch Haniger in there, does Mitch Haniger strike out? So I don't know. It's injuries. It's tough, but you've got to weather the storm. And at the end of the day, at the current moment, you are in a wild card spot. So you've got to get back to gaining ground and continuing to build on that.
For sure.
In terms of injury-related news, as talked about on the 22nd, Julio Rodriguez is a last-minute scratch, and I mean last minute, like last minute. No media didn't find out, the fans didn't find out until players were running out onto the field, essentially, due to left wrist soreness. So he missed the entire Houston series. He reportedly felt pain in his wrist during one of the Rangers games in that last series before the All-Star break. Adrenaline pushed him through the home run derby, which is 81 homers. 81 homers on a sore wrist.
Impressive.
Which, it's ridiculous to me because, there was, is he really hurt? Oh, why didn't you pinch hit him? Why didn't he go out there? Make him go out there, which is pretty insane to me to think about because, your sacrifice for this Houston. I think a lot of emphasis was put on this Houston series as if it was make or break, which I don't buy into. Because you're right off the All-Star break. And I get it. People want that streak to continue. Who doesn't, right? You're playing I get it with all the cheating. I get that with Houston. But this is still a damn talented ball club. And you can't just sit here, they cheated. You're going to have to play them at the end of the day. They've got great pitching. Even with the banging the trash cans, they've got great pitching. Justin Verlander, he's having a great year. He's I believe, I don't think he's quite 40. He might be 40. And he's pumping 99 still. That's pretty unheard of. I think the last time someone did that and is like 35 plus was 2011. It's 11 years ago.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of baseball played in that time. And no one else was able to pump 99 at his age group. This is a good ball club, and I'm not worried. I said it in the article last night for the game. I'm not worried. You've got the entire rest of the second half. I know that there's parts of the fandom that's hitting the giant, where's the red flashing emoji, the red light,
Oh my gosh, the alert, like siren thing.
Yeah, I'm like, no, man, we're in July. We play till early October. You're playing a lot of bad teams. Obviously, you have to take care of the business. You can't just write it off, but I'm not hitting the panic button. Would like Julio back though. With that being said,
an update on that at all as to like how long he might be resting?
The hope is that he can play today.
Yeah.
So we'll see about that. But I know with Mitch Haniker at least going for the rehab assignment, there's no timetable as well. But Julio is expected to be back today. Jesse Winker twisted his right ankle in that game against Houston, and they're hoping that he's able to avoid an injury list. Time on the injury list, but we don't have official word on that either. So kind of wait and touch and go. Also on the 22nd, Kyle Lewis was activated off of the 7-day IL. So as I mentioned, good to see Kyle back. As we get to the rest of the MLB draft, heading into team news on the 18th. So we'll just go off the names for you here of the selected draft picks on the 6th round. Pick 186, Josh Hood, a shortstop out of North Carolina State, as you can see pictured here. Round 7, pick 216, Hogan Windish, a second baseman out of UNC Greensboro. Round 8, 246, pick Tatum Levens, a catcher out of the University of Pittsburgh. Round 9, pick number 276, Tyler Gow, a right-handed pitcher out of Jessera. How do you say that? You know how to say that? I don't know how to say that.
No, I think you.
Sarah, Catholic High School. Round 10, pick number 306, Bill Knight, outfielder out of Mercer University, the same college that Kyle Lewis came out of. Round 11, pick number 336, Marcelo Perez, a right-handed pitcher out of TCU, Texas Christian University. Round 12, pick number 366, Troy Taylor, a right-handed pitcher out of UC Irvine. Round 13, pick number 396, Darren Bowen, a right-handed pitcher out of UNC Pembroke. Round 14, pick number 426, Tyler Cleveland, a right-handed pitcher out of Central Arkansas. Round 15, pick number 456, Blake Rambush, a third baseman out of Auburn University. Round 16, pick number 486, Jacob McNary, right-handed pitcher out of Alabama. Round 17, pick number 516, Stephen Wraith, a right-handed pitcher out of the University of Washington. Round 18, pick number 546, Brandon Schaefer, a left-handed pitcher out of University of North Carolina. Round 19, pick 5, 7, 6, Curtis Washington Jr., an outfielder from Purdue. And then wrapping it up in round 20 with pick number 606, Nick Zona, an infielder out of James Madison University. So I think we talked about it last week, but it's kind of tough to get the excitement out of the MLB draft when there's 20 rounds. There's a lot going on. And again, a lot of these guys won't see the big league club until few years down the road. So I get it. Some of these guys, maybe when we're here, even maybe a year from now, we'll hear more of them in Everett, in Arkansas, and Tacoma. Maybe with the big league club, but I feel like that's kind of pretty hard. As mentioned, on the 20th, Mitch Haniker joined the Equest Hawks up in Everett in high A ball for a 3-game rehab assignment. On the weekend, Mitch went 3 hit for 9 with 1 run, 1 homer, and 2 RBIs. So good to see Mitch back in action, but again, not entirely sure when he'll be back with the Mariners themselves. I know there's talk that he's going to go and join the Rainiers now, and while playing both some DH and outfield, so getting him active. But again, no direct timetable on that. In terms of roster-related moves on the 22nd, in a corresponding move to Kyle Lewis being activated, outfielder Justin Upton was optioned and then elected free agency instead. So best of luck to Justin. I know he played a minimal role, but he had a home run to tie the game against. He was part of the streak. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
So thank you for your contributions, Mr. Upton. In league-related news, Juan Soto. I know we've talked about Juan Soto before. I know with the losses, there might be heightened expectation for that. I'll admit it. I was feeling some pressure to do it too. Because again, let's look at it this way. He is closer to Jared Kelenich's age. He's 23, and he's a game changer. So you look at your outfield, right? You've got Jesse Winker in left, Julio Rodriguez in center, and Juan Soto in right. Mitch Haniger bumps down to DH. You probably have to send Kyle Lewis in that trade, which would break my heart because I love Kyle Lewis.
But you're warming up to the idea?
At the right price, but also, here's my, remember what I said with Garoppolo? My hookup with this, you have to extend him. Because if you just trade for him and he's a rental, you did nothing. He was a rental, even if you make the playoffs. Sure, fine, you break the streak, but you cost your farm to break the streak? No. So give up. I'd say if you're able to give up a guy like Kyle Lewis, you got to throw in probably another big leaguer in there. Maybe a guy like George Kirby. I know some said Logan Gilbert, but that would be ludicrous. I would stop right there. I'd hang up the phone. Maybe 2 or 3 of the prospects. 2 or 3. Okay. Not 4 or 5. That's ridiculous. Have to take on a salary comp, which we'd have to do. But none of it matters if you don't sign him to an extension. In that negotiation, you have to say, hey, Juan, so insert deal. Okay. Pen to paper. All right. Send the trade through. Go ahead. Come to Seattle. We'll put you in whatever damn number you want. 44 is taken, That's what I'm entirely contingent on. I admit it. I don't have a mock for you. I don't. I can look that up and we can talk about it because the trade deadline's coming up. I can get that ready for next week, right? But at the end of the day, none of these proposals matter unless, the little asterisk says contract details. Because I don't want him for club control for 3 years. That's fine. I want him to be a Mariner.
How realistic would that be, though? Even talking about him possibly coming to Seattle. Have they shown interest?
Yes. They were one of the 7 teams to inquire about him. The Cardinals and St. Louis are regarded as favorites. So realistic, yeah, they've reached out. I don't know how heavy they're pursuing it, though. Because I know Jerry DePoto's talked about adding in their starting pitcher since they sent George Kirby down. So it's funny. George was actually on the clubhouse on Friday.
Tweeting that, yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, hi, George," and I talked to him, and he remembered me, so that was cool. But I know they're managing his innings. I know he's still got a locker up there at T-Mobile Park. So, but I'm sure he's spending time with the Rainiers. I'm sure just because of how close they are. Why not?
Yeah.
Right? He's on the 40-man. So, anyway, so in terms of Juan Soto, outside of talking about his potential to the Mariners, on the 19th, the Nationals did not fly Soto to the All-Star game. They didn't give him a private jet. They sent him on commercial after he turned down a deal.
And then seeing Juan Soto like
I don't know what I do.
sitting in a row right next to you.
On the 23rd, San Diego was viewed as the most motivated team in the chase for Soto. Padres have taken an aggressive approach to that trade market. The Yankees are officially in the race, which I roll my eyes to, because if you've reached out to them, it doesn't necessarily mean anything. I can reach out to you about buying your house, but that doesn't mean I'm serious. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, right? I don't have the money for that. Don't tell me. On the 19th, Aaron Judge hinted at a Yankees exit. The slugging outfielder says, "Don't be upset when asked about potentially not signing an extension with New York. Does not give a clear answer in regards to signing with the team long term."
Too big.
I only threw that in there because there was this what's a word for like a miracle? There's like a term for it. It's like a shot in the dark. It's like a long shot that he could end up in Seattle. Hey, I'd give them money to Aaron Judge. Take my money. That's in free agency though. I'm not trading for him. God no.
Yeah.
On the 20th, Albert Pujols, in his legendary last year, earns another accolade, receiving the Muhammad Ali Sports Humanitarian Award at the ESPY. So congratulations to Albert. On the 22nd, this one's kind of interesting. We got a photo for you. The shift, cutting down the shift in the minor leagues has begun. So you can see here, this looks like a normal baseball field, right? But teams are placing a pie slice, which you can see there's these two lines over here. There's these two lines that are showing where the infield cannot stand. So you have to go in your standard positions, which is, I mean, I get it. I get cutting down the shift, but and this is in the minor league, so I'm sure that like when the big league level comes, it won't be like that. But it's interesting to see how that's being cut, how they're going to hold that to it. Also on the 22nd, as a meme, Toronto put up a football score against the Boston Red Sox. The Blue Jays won 28-5 at Fenway, which is...
I had to double take when I saw that score.
It's brutal.
Yeah.
Brutal. On the 23rd, teams are calling the Angels about Shohei Ohtani, but Anaheim does not have any intention to pick up the phone in relation to trades like that. There was a second report later that the Angels are expecting several proven commodity veterans in a trade for Ohtani so that they can keep their playoff aspirations alive, which I laugh at because the Angels aren't going to do anything.
That was
looking
not
ahead,
wishy-washy.
No. The Angels are wasting the careers of Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani. You can quote me on that because it's been happening for years with Mike Trout. Looking ahead, the Mariners play it's like the 3 series against Texas. The Houston series this past week, and then 2 series against the Rangers, and then the Astros. This next series is at home, obviously, July 25th versus 27th versus the Rangers. The first 2 games of the series being 7:10 starts. The 27th game is a Wednesday matinee at 12:40. And then the team heads on the road for a 4-game set against the Astros, looking to play better than they did this past home series. July 28th through 31st, the 28th and 29th are 5:10 p.m. Pacific time starts. July 30th is a 4:10 start, and then the 31st is an 11:10 a.m. start. With that being said, we look over to a team that had its road bumps.
It did.
But was able to avenge a prior season loss to the Atlanta Dream. So no nightmares for the Storm in that one. How are we doing storm-wise? What's going on over there at Climate Pledge?
A close loss on the road at the Chicago Sky, 78-74. Our player of the game was Joel Lloyd, 18 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, and 2 steals. On the 22nd, they traveled to Phoenix, and that was, unfortunately, another loss. They just kind of they lost it there towards the end of the game and just couldn't really recover. And Skylar Diggins went off, and Diana Taurasi went off. So, yeah, that was a loss, 94-78. Our player of the game was Brianna Stewart, 22 points, 14 rebounds, and 2 steals. And a win. A win at Climate Pledge on the 24th versus the Atlanta Dream, who they, as you mentioned, had lost to prior in the season. That was a 10-point win, 82-72. Our player of the game was Tina Charles, who I think is our player of the game for the first time.
Yeah, that's kind of weird to say, I guess.
Isn't it? She had 27 points, 15 rebounds, 4 blocks, was plus 27 on the court. And Charles became the 4th player to score 7,000 points in WNBA history. First player with 7,000 points and 3,500 rebounds. So milestone for her. And that 7,000 point came on a 3. Which
so I've got something to ask you. I've been curious about this because you've we've been having you kind of primarily take the storm, right? So one, it is cool. I like that you acknowledge that it was on the 3 because I think it was discussed in the presser that she didn't really take threes to begin her career. Obviously, that's an element to that game and the way that the game of basketball as a whole has kind of evolved. But so I know that you in your article have mentioned that Ezzy has been taking the bench seat and China's been starting these last 2 games. At least from what you have seen, why do you think that is? And what are you thinking? Obviously, this game is great. I know she got a double-double down in Phoenix. But what are your thoughts? I'm just curious about your thoughts on that because obviously we talked about it, how this could be a breakout year for Ezzy. She's been playing really solidly. What have you seen in that regard in the 2 centers that we've got currently active on the roster?
Did make
2 of the 3.
Yeah,
sorry.
2 of the 3.
Chantel, I'm sorry.
It did make me kind of sad. I wondered if that first game that she started was the turning point of that transition of Tina becoming a starter. But I thought it was working well. I thought she was doing great coming off the bench. I thought her contribution was still good to the team. And then she goes and, does what she did on Sunday as a starter. But I don't want to see Ezzy's contribution go down any. And it looks like the minutes are being shared pretty okay. So I don't know. Coach Quinn said that against that loss to Phoenix, that Ezzy was in a bit of foul trouble. I didn't quite notice it during the game. She had 3 fouls. I mean, you still have a couple fouls to give. It's not, pull out of the game yet. But I'm curious as I was going to say as the season continues, but we're also coming to an end here. So I don't want to see Ezzy's contribution go down. So that's the part that does concern me. I don't want to see her lose her footing coming off the bench.
And I mean, at least like on paper, right? You look at it either way, whether you have Tina on the bench or Ezzy on the bench, having either one of those players on the bench is a luxury, I feel like. And as we talk about, right, any good basketball team is going to need that bench, especially if you're going deep in the playoffs. And, whether it's matchups wise, I mean, Ezzy, I don't know if you've seen it or not, but I don't know if she's gone down in it, but she was for a good amount of the time leading the leagues in blocks per game.
Yeah.
So, I mean, a great rim protector, somebody who has hit a couple of threes here and there,
She has.
But I was just curious about that, at least from your perspective, considering that that's been, so, and obviously there's a lot of weight on that decision, considering what you're playing for, who's on your team. I know Tina hasn't said it's her last year, but she's talked about it, so she's winding down.
Yeah,
it's Brianna's last year. It's obviously Sue Bird's last year. So there's a lot of players who want to go out with another title this year. So there's a lot of weight, I feel like, in all these decisions, especially if you're Coach Quinn.
Yeah, and she is playing around with lost the word. With the roster, she did have Brianna, Ezzy, and Tina in at one point, and that was interesting to see.
That's a big lineup.
Yeah. So, and they also played a lot more zone defense, which they haven't always done. And Coach Quinn did acknowledge that the Dream liked to play ISO, and so they wanted to change their approach to the game. But continuing to be curious to see what she does.
Well, and then I think you talking about the Dream doing a lot of ISO ball. Being able to play a zone well after playing a man well, that's a lot of versatility. I know I looked at it in that game because Bill was at the game against the Dream. I was not. But just looking at it stats wise and hearing about the zone, we look at that starting 5. Sue's, she may be playing her last year, but she's got a great IQ basketball wise. Drew Lloyd, great defender. One of the probably should have. I don't know how high she got on defensive team last year, but had a great year defensively, has a great IQ as well. Stewie has great length. Tina, great 14 defensive rebounds is ridiculous to see. Ezzy's a great shot blocker. Tina and Stewie had great blocks in this last game, right?
Yes,
and then Brianna January is a great perimeter guard. You've got a lot of defensive flexibility. Gabby Williams. We don't even need to talk about Gabby Williams. So it's to me that's incredible to see the versatility. And then you've got the bench. It's just sometimes you've got to really put this all together. Obviously, the loss at Chicago, defending champs. I get it. Phoenix, SDS, Deanna Taurasi. I'm sure Deanna Taurasi got up for that game because of what it was, right?
Yeah, and Coach Quinn also made sure to mention that there were thousands of fans there, and that she felt like that kind of shifted the momentum once Phoenix did go up.
Yeah. So, you know, I did want to touch on that though. I thought that was really interesting to look at. So, you know.
Moving on to some injury news here. Mercedes Russell, we actually have a little bit more clarity in regard to her. She had a procedure on July 19th to treat recurrent low pressure headaches. She's out for the remainder of the regular season. However, again, regular season, Coach Quinn was hopeful that she could return and give the team some help in the playoffs. So, moving on to some team notes here. In case you missed it, the final regular season game versus the Las Vegas Aces on August 7th is sold out. That's 18,000 fans that will be at Climate Pledge for Sue Bird's final regular season game. So if you didn't get a chance to snag some tickets, unfortunately, you can't anymore.
Unless you want to pay resale prices.
Oh, yeah. And those are a bit crazy right now. So
doesn't mean you can't go and see that game next Wednesday, though, right? On the 3rd,
yeah.
You know, I mean, second to last.
Yeah.
Or if you want to wait for playoff tickets. I'm sure those might be
paying for those, yeah.
buco bucks too. So, you know.
The team currently sits at a record of 18-10. Of course, we discussed no Commissioner's Cup as the other teams will be playing for that. Looking ahead, they play the Connecticut. They're on the road for the next 3 games. They play the Connecticut Sun on the 28th. That's a 4 p.m. start. On the 30th at the Washington Mystics. That's an early start, 9 a.m. And then on the 31st, again, the Washington Mystics with a 12 p.m. start. That about wraps us up here. So we'll move on to our Sounders.
I don't know if you saw it, but before we head over there,
I did.
8 of the last 6 games are on the road to end the regular season, which is really tough. It's really tough. So, you know, just wanted to take a peek at that. But
yeah,
heading over to our Sounders here who were playing at home on July 23rd versus the Colorado Rapids after going on a quick 2-game road trip that was less than fun. The Sounders were able to get a bounce back win, secure 3 points. Ignore the little thing on the bottom. I apologize. I did not update that. The win over the Rapids was a 2-1 win. Play the game. Left winger Jordan Morris, a goal, 1 penalty drawn, and an 8.4 match rating. Jordan Morris, for his efforts, would actually be named to the MLS Team of the Week, with Nico Ladera being named to the MLS Team of the Week bench. With that being said, with this match against Colorado, you had lost the last 3 matches. You had failed to score at all in those last 3 matches. And going into this game, Colorado scored in the 3rd minute. So it's like, ooh, this is bad already. But Seattle was able to buckle down. Jordan Morris scored, I believe it was in the first half still. But then, I mean, so you're equal, which is fine, good, sure. But then we go right after halftime. Kellen Rowe got a second yellow to get a red card, and he was ejected. So Seattle's down to 10 men. So you're having to hold on to a 1-goal lead. When your defensive, your back line's been playing kind of back and forth these last 4 games effectively, because that first goal the Colorado got total lost a man, shouldn't have happened. So it's like, hey, we're down to 10 now. And Seattle was able to hold through and dominate offensively. The only offensive stat that Seattle did not dominate out of shots on target, possession, was corners, and they lost. They only had like 1 less corner or something. So they were able to keep the pressure on despite being down a man, and Colorado really did not make Stephen Fry sweat in that second half. And really, that first goal wasn't his fault. So good to see that. It's a tough, gritty win. And to continue on Jordan Morris, that penalty drawn, that second goal, that Seattle doesn't get those 3 points without Jordan Morris.
Yeah.
Doesn't happen. This is the Jordan Morris that is able to stretch the field. We talk about football, right? Stretching the field.
Mm-hmm.
Jordan Morris stretches the field. He's improved his header game, and I mean, he's just overall a valuable attacker at the Sounders club. And again, without him, Seattle doesn't win this game. So a tip of the cap to Jordan Morris and getting MLS Team of the Week honors. So thankfully, back on track. 3 more points. You're not yet in a playoff spot again. You're at 8th, so and I believe you're only like a point or 2 out of a playoff spot, and you're like 5 points out of like the 3rd seed. So you string some of these together, and you can jump up the standings pretty heavily. But that has to be done, obviously. Easier to say it than do it. And it doesn't get much easier in their next matchup. So Seattle sits at a 9-win, 10-loss, 2-draw record, 8th in the Western Conference, as mentioned. Their next matchup is July 29th on the road against LAFC. LAFC is already a damn talented club, and they added Gareth Bale and Chiellini defensively. Chiellini defensively, not Gareth Bale. Gareth Bale's not obviously the defender. If you follow much of any football at all, you know who Gareth Bale is. Obviously, he's getting older, but it just adds to a LAFC team. So it's not going to be an easy, because they're obvious. Well, all of that considered, right? They have the best record in the Western Conference and probably the best team in the MLS. So doesn't get much easier for our Sounders. With that being said, the Kraken continue to add. They're one of the teams that I looked at as, with these temperatures going up, they continue to seem better and better. They seem like the hotter teams. So we've got some player news, but also some broadcast stuff. What do we got going on over there, Belle?
I'm going to go to you for help on that name, though, because I don't want to butcher it.
I'm not exactly sure. I'm going to agree with you on that. Eddie Olczyk is joining the Kraken TV broadcast team, regarded as one of the best in the business, having spent a lot of time with the Chicago Blackhawks. 16 years as a color broadcast, as a color commentator on their TV broadcast. Will also reportedly have some sort of a managerial role with the team. That's not exactly clear, but so it's John Forsland, the JT Brown were the two TV broadcasters this past season. They're not planning to kick one out. They're planning to make it a 3-man group.
Oh, okay.
So which is going to be interesting. But yes, I apologize if I butchered the name. That is on me. We'll correct it going forward. It's not that big of a deal. But yes, so there's that. And then what else do we have?
Moving on here on the 21st, a rumor per CSS sources.
Wow.
Forward Jared McCann will reportedly go back to number 19 this season, switching from last season's number 16.
So last season he couldn't wear the number 19 because teammate, until the trade deadline, Calle Yarncroke had the 19. McCann wore 19 when he was in Pittsburgh, and he also wore it in junior hockey. So I think it's just a comfort thing.
Yeah.
Nothing big deal, but might have found out about it first.
Kind of a big deal if you have a jersey.
I have one.
Do you mind the number change?
No, because as long as I've got the inaugural season patch on, it's technically correct, because that's what he wore in the first year. So I don't, I know there was some angst when I posted that. People didn't like that, but it's like, hey, it's fine,
On the 22nd, the Kraken have traded Oliver
Bjorkstrand.
Okay, so the B is silent. Okay, from the Columbus Blue Jackets in exchange for a 2023 third-round pick and a fourth-round pick. Bjorkstrand finished the last season with 57 points.
So this is a big deal for Seattle because, he's a 27-year-old forward, but this was viewed as a salary cap dump by the Blue Jackets because it's effectively deemed as a cap casualty. But he just came off a career year, 57 points there. He's a guy that's a great skater, is able to move the puck really well, able to score, obviously, and just be an overall contributor. And Seattle traded a third-round pick and a fourth-round pick in next year's draft, and they still have tons of picks in those rounds because of their stockpiling that they did during the season. Yeah. So, they add another great skater to one of their top lines. So another great offensive contributor, and for effectively little. That's pretty great. So now you're looking at some of your top lines. You've got Andre Burakovsky, Jared McCann, you just mentioned. Jaden Schwartz is going to be back. Brendan Tanev will be back from injury. Bjorkstrand, you add him in there, and that's some of your top lines. Matty Beniers scored 9 points in 10 games last season. Obviously, was a rookie, and he'll get figured out to an extent, but he's got an offseason now at the NHL level. Shane Wright will probably join this team at some point this season. He was a number 4 overall pick, should have gone number 1. So there's some improvement in this Kraken roster, and that's what Ron Francis was saying that he was going to do. They wanted to win games this season. So I was excited for that trade, and a lot of the Columbus fans were not happy that took place. So usually that's a good thing. Yeah. Obviously, fans only know so much, but it's if the fan base really liked him,
it's saying something for sure.
Yeah.
On the 24th, the team extends Morgan Geekie. Geekie and Seattle agreed to a 1-year, $1.4 million extension. And they also signed Michael Kempney. He won the Stanley Cup in 2018 with Washington. He's a good player that has been held back due to injury. Played in 15 games last season and had 2 points. Are you concerned by the injury?
It's definitely a caution thing, right? Because there are definitely guys who, and I don't like to say it, but Kyle Lewis, right? Kyle Lewis has won Rookie of the Year in 2020. Just has got to stay healthy. Kempney is a guy that has been really reviewed as a guy that just, if you can keep him healthy, sure, you get a great defenseman. But I know that's something that, again, you got to keep guys healthy, whether that's the training staff or that's the dietitian, all that, however the organization can help him do that, or it's just bad luck. I think it's leg injuries he's had to deal with, which aren't exactly fun. But I think that's just, it's like caution. It's like, hey, man, we know what you can do on the ice. We just got to keep you in one piece. So we'll see how that continues to go. But I think it's like taking a gamble, right? At the end of the day, it can pay off. It can also not pay off. So we'll see how it goes. But I think it's solid, depending money-wise on how it goes,
Right. Any comment on our extension for Morgan Geekie?
I like Morgan Geekie. I thought that, he's a guy that Ron Francis, when he was a general manager of the Hurricanes, that he drafted, and then he drafted in the expansion draft. So he drafted him twice. He must like him, right? Geekie's a guy that I saw him. He showed flashes of offensive potential this past season. He's just putting it together. I know he's not like very young. His brother actually got drafted this past year too. Wow. Yeah, some people wanted to reunite him. No, he's not that old. He's 24. He's a 24-year-old. He's still picking it up. And we talked about all those guys that I talked about in the front few lines, right? And then you got a younger guy like Morgan Geekie to one of those, third or fourth lines. I like having those guys. That, and you've got Alex Wenberg still. I mean, there's names I'm forgetting. There's a lot of guys that played well for Seattle last year. Definitely add a guy like Burakovsky, who won it all this past season with Colorado. Bjorkstrand, who just came out for career year. Obviously, it's tough to follow up career years, but I think with what you've got right now, I really like what you're starting to build, and that you should definitely have improved at least a few wins better than last year, because there were a lot of games last year where you were pretty close. And so I think some of these guys, and having played better, Philip Grubauer playing with some of these defensemen and getting more settled in Seattle, you should definitely win some more. I'm not going to guarantee playoffs because I don't want to take that shot and look like an idiot when it doesn't work, but I definitely think there are a few wins better than they were last season. I think there's definitely improvement, and say maybe 24. Let's shoot for 24.
And that was the goal, improvement. So Correct. They did what they sought out to do.
Absolutely.
And we can close out on our Kraken here now and move on to our OL Reign.
Yes, I'd like to give you a training camp date, but I have no idea when that'll be. So we'll get to that when we figure it out. Team-related news for our Reign. On the 20th, it would be announced that Fox 13 here in Seattle in the Pacific Northwest Quarter region will be broadcasting 4 OL Reign games this season, which is a great start. You'd like to see them broadcast more of them, but it's a step, right? We do baby steps. So this upcoming match on July 30th at Angel City FC will be broadcast on Fox 13. And August 14th is a home game versus Gotham. That will be broadcast on Fox 13. The next few, August 26th on the road against Orlando, and then the 21st at Gotham on the road. So it's good to see. It really is good to see because I get people to comment, hey, where can I watch this game? It's like, it's on Twitch. I don't know what Twitch is. It's on Paramount Plus. I don't have Paramount Plus.
Yeah.
Right? It's just, it's very tough. And I've talked to a few of the Reign players, and they've said, yeah, it's tough telling people where to watch our games because they'll go out and do their normal lives, and people go, oh, you play pro soccer? Where can I watch? And it's like, well,
subscription
or Twitch maybe,
right.
or so it's definitely tough. But it's good to see the Fox is doing this. I've got my own opinions about the big outlets, but it's good to see this, and you just hope that they continue to do this, right? Also on the 20th, it would be announced that Megan Rapinoe's corner kick goal in the Olympics with Team USA, known as an Olympico, is awarded the ESPY Award for Best Play. So that's pretty damn cool. I like to recognize our Reign players and their national team spots. And league-related news, as mentioned, on the 18th, the U.S. women's national team would clinch their Olympics berth for 2024 in Paris. The U.S. was crowned the CONCACAF Dub champions in a win over Canada, which those are always good games. So Team USA, I mean, I didn't expect anything less, but, So with that being said, we'll push on here. The Rain's next matchup, as the Rain are 4 wins, 3 losses, and 5 draws, sitting at 6th in the NWSL, is July 30th versus Angel City FC with a 7:30 p.m. start time. As mentioned, you can watch that. That's on the road. On Fox 13. So, continuing on here, we don't have Seawolves news, but there's a different team that we're adding here because they're technically pro, right? And they just haven't been around while we've been doing the show. The Seattle, well, they're not technically currently the Seattle Dragons, but that's what they last were. In the XFL, now owned by a group with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Seattle is one of the 8 cities that's going to be in the XFL when the league returns in 2023 with a kickoff of February. The other teams are Arlington, Houston, Orlando, Las Vegas, San Antonio, Seattle, St. Louis, and Washington, D.C. So Seattle obviously going to have another sort of football team here to watch. They will be playing at Lumen Field, so if you need more football fix when the Seahawks may not be playing in the spring, XFL is coming back. A lot of local talent was on the team last time when they were in 2020. Kason Williams, BJ Daniels played with the Seahawks. He was a quarterback there, so definitely cool to see that return. And I have a feeling we'll be at some of those games and covering some of those when available.
Do you think The Rock will be there?
I'd like for The Rock to be there. I wouldn't like to be rock bottomed, but I would like to be there. Hey, man, don't pull the WWE stuff on me. So we'll get into wrapping it up here with Seattle Stars of the Week. 2 different picks here for the course of being original. Tina Charles, that's a great pick. I like that pick, not only because we share a name, but, I think that, starting's been great for her, but just having Tina Charles on this club is going to be great going into the playoffs and going deep into the playoffs. So what helped you in that decision there?
Just as you said, she's going to be such key in making a playoff run. She draws double teams. They weren't double teaming her during that game where she had 27 points, and then eventually they realized that they had to, for a good reason. But they were leaving her open at the 3. So again, it's so cool to see her evolving as a player. And she did say that during the end of her career here, she does have to evolve for the game. So it's nice to see it happen. Yeah. And again, she's going to be a key part to the whole Storm roster in this playoff run.
I mean, yeah, you make great picks there entirely. I went with Ron Francis solely because of the additions that he's made for the Kraken this offseason, like we basically have been talking about. In addition to that, as they talked about it through most of the season, they said, once it started looking like the inaugural season, everybody set the expectation for Vegas for maybe the playoffs. Once it became obvious that wasn't going to be the case, Ron Francis said, we're going to be aggressive in free agency. We're going to use our draft picks as currency to trade, which they did there with Bjorkstrand. And they want to win games next year. And I think you've definitely, like I said, you've added a few great pieces on, skating wise. You added some talented defensemen that can help you score as well, help you with the power play. You got to back up from Philip Grubauer with Chris Drieger out, so that'll hurt not having Chris Drieger till about December or so. That's a few months of the season, right? But I definitely think you improve, and I would imagine you're not going to finish last in the Pacific Division again. So
I'm going to put you on the spot, and you know how other leagues do the rankings for off-season moves? What would you rate the Kraken's offseason?
Are you making me do like out of all the 32 teams in the NHL or like a letter grade?
Letter grade.
With the addition of Bjorkstrand, I'm going to give him a B+.
Okay.
I know that there was talk about adding like a high tier, defenseman, and technically still free agency is going. There's a lot of guys that are available still, but I'd say a B+. I think, again, you've added a few wins. That's what you needed to do. And, Burakovsky's here for 5 years on his deal. Jared McCann got locked up during the season last year for several years. Gruby's locked in for several years. So you've got guys that are going to help you win for years to come. So B+, I would say.
Not
B+. Do you have any parting thoughts before we head out of here? Obviously, again, Curtis for being here and all the work that he's doing behind the camera. Kind of feels weird. The Big O ain't here. He's going to be on the road. They're doing stuff on the road. Just some great stuff with Baseball Beyond Borders. Proof was down there in Compton, sadly, as the Kings fell in their tournament. But great stuff that they're doing. I believe it's the Reconciliation trailer that they just dropped. So a lot of great stuff that they're doing. outside of our pro sports here. But do you have any thoughts on what we've been doing here over the past week?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to say that you can throw yourself into that as well because you do a lot for our show. And there are times where I miss updates and I scroll through and I'm like, oh, look what Charles got. So,
well, at
make
the end of
sure
the
you follow
day,
us.
to be able to, have people like you, we got Matt, Liv, Q, Bird's Eye View Visuals, guys like Curtis behind the camera, Salman and his contributions, to be able to have that team and to be able to provide tons of original content, social media posts, updates for people, as opposed to some of these Seattle sports shows that, might add a few articles in here now and then and just retweet stuff. It's not what we're here for.
Yeah.
Anybody can follow a pro sports team's Twitter. So with that being said, we're going to wrap it up here. Send it out to you. Try to keep cool. Use a sunscreen. Lord knows my farmer's hand's going to need it. Take care of yourself. Be well. We'll see you next week. And hopefully we get some more wins from some of these teams. Otherwise, take care of yourself and make today a great day.